complete abstraction being made in the meaning of science, the outcome of such a study when directed upon the specific language. And we're going to be talking on English and what black and white mean and all that nonsense and how it didn't exist, but I'll get on that later on. Linguistics, the study of meaning, the study of the linguistic development by classifying and examining changes in the form, which I'm going to be doing later on specifically to show what people think what words mean one thing they don't. Also called scientifics, the branch of semantics, dealing with the relations between science and what they denote. Okay, now I'm going to jump in on this. Now, this is very specific. So this is what you do with etymologies. So you can see here, this is how words are broken up. So you've got prefix, root word, suffix. So the root of a word tends to come in the middle of the word, and then they tend to prefix it. So its origin is the root of the word, is the middle, and you've got prefixes and suffix. That's how they change the meaning of a word. If you've got a prefix on it or a suffix on it, it changes what it means. If people think it means one thing and it doesn't, it means another. So in order to get to the root of the word, you tend to go to the middle of the word, the root, the sign of it, and that's how it works. So how you break down words, I tend to do, so you've got here nationality. So you've got nat, you've got ion, al, and is, so nationality. So you're breaking it up. So into prefix, root word is origin, suffix. Same with con, sty, chew, theon. Yeah, same way when you're breaking up words to find out what they mean. And same as you've got inter, nash, ion, and al. So when you're breaking up words to get to this root, you always break it up into prefix, root word, suffix. Okay, if it's a short word, you might have one prefix, root word, then suffix. All right, depends, it varies. But that's how you do it when you're doing etymological and you're breaking the words up. Now I'm going to get on to racism. So ra, sci, and ism. Okay, now what I'm using here is I'm using law dictionaries. I'm not using, you're black supremacy, you're white. I don't make this stuff up. All I'm doing is getting law dictionaries and using the law dictionaries. What you're not taught to do properly is you're not taught how to read words properly. You're not taught how to look at where the origin comes from, and you're not taught about the form of the words and where to find those words. We're going to be talking about an aspect of that when I get through my talk, as I go through the rest of now, Ra, in its etymological form, is actually sun. The sun is like Ra. So like Saturn is El, so sun is Ra. So you've got Ra, Psi, and Ism. Ism is added on to change the meaning. Now I'm going to explain where it comes from because I've got the definitions here. Now these are the terms that I've used from law dictionary, not my terms. Law dictionary, a proper law dictionary. And the reason why I'm going to tell you which dictionaries I use so you can do your own due diligence. I use Bouvier's 1856 edition. I use Oxford, and there's a reason why I use Oxford because Oxford deals with the rules of the English language. And by rule of law with Oxford, they always go to the etymological meaning. Once you know how to read words properly, you know what the stuff means, which I'm going to talk about later on. So we're going to, that's why I'm using Oxford. Okay, and I've given you the reference point here because you can see down there. It is Oxford, Bouvier's, and Black's Law, the dictionaries I've been using when I've done this talk. So, racism. Okay, the origin of root word race is not clear because it's made up. Linguists generally agree that it came from English language or from Middle French, but there is no such agreement how it generally came into Latin-based languages. That's because they've done it on purpose because it didn't exist. They've added it in later on. 2. Race. 1. Each of the major divisions of, again, races. 1. Each of the major divisions of humankind, each having a distinct physical characteristics, and I'm going to talk about that everyone. I mentioned Carlos earlier, and there's a reason why I'm mentioning this now, because races are defined by what you think is defined, but it's not. It's been deliberately done by a guy called Castellinos. I'm going to expose him later on because he worked for the Roman cult and he deliberately classified people wrongly to make them civilian martyrs, but I'm leaving on that for later on. The fact of concept of divisions into races, genus, species, breed, or variety of animals or plants, 4 groups of persons, which is fiction, animals or plants connected by common descent, or any great division, living creature, or the human race. So that's where that's another division of Oxford. That's where I've got race from, another version of Oxford. Okay, now another from Oxford that I've got here. It was this is for the second edition. The theory that distinct human characteristics and abilities are determined by race. The same dictionary termed racism is off with racialism. the belief in a superiority of a particular race. And this is where this nonsense is coming because the Jesuits making people think they're more powerful when they actually are not. So I'm just going to stop there for a second because I've got more where this came from. I just want to see if Jupiter wants to jump in or say anything or say anything at this point.
No, I'm cool with that at the minute.
All right, that's fine. Okay, so I can.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I am surprised though that it's so new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just what I mean. The superiority is defined by the 89, but the actual root words are defined in Middle English. Now, Middle English and the English language, this is defined only in the 17th and 18th centuries. Only fairly, it's only like 200 years old, but it wasn't done before then. But I'm going to show you that later on. You're going to see I've done this on purpose to put this first, because when I go on later on, when I start exposing it, you'll know why I've done this first. So yeah, so it's fairly new, but if racialism is when it's been defined here, is it's been upgraded from what it used to be termed before, and that's why they keep changing it, because they know people are clocking on to race being not what you think it is. When I get to Carlos and Leos later on, you'll see why I've done it the way I've done it. Okay, so I'm going to continue as we're going. So here we go. Race classification. So I'm going to explain how races are classified wrongly and inappropriately. So race classification is by Jesuit writing on nature. This is the Roman cabal cult who have programmed most people thinking that so-called whites are superior and so-called blacks are not. It's all nonsense because you're not black or white either. But I'm getting on that later on. Jesuit writing on nature with an emphasis works on produced in their missions. This is how people have been programmed. I'm going to show that later on with the paper, but it's all coming, don't worry. The symbolic and material exchanges presupposed by the practice of botany, exchange of knowledge between the Jesuits and native experts. You see, so this is what I mean. They're experts interchange the information between Jesuits and learned naturalists in Europe, and among them circulation of biological species. The approach to marvels in the animal world by the kind of natural but philosophical embedded in the works of, and like, this is the people you need to look at who've fraudulently done these fraudulent classifications to put us into these boxes. Athanasius Kircher, Caspar Schott, and Juan Eusebio. The issues raised by the natural histories or his story, the story he's given us deliberately, of the New World. So what is the New World? You need to look in. I'm going to get in on that later on. The New World. You see, the classified people. What was the Old World? You see, you've got to ask all these questions. In particular, in Iberian America, which is not the United States, Iberian America. So something was different. And the response, the Jesuits to the ascent, the enlightened natural history, as represented by Carlos Linnaeus, and he's key later on, I'm going to expose who is Carlos Linnaeus, George Louis Leclerc, and Compete de Buffon. And those names there, these are the people who work with the Roman court to set up today what you call racism. They set all this up, and it actually derives further back from that from certain other treaties. But the modern racism, which is the classification of black, white, and all this nonsense that don't exist, and none of it's even real, is classified by these people who were racist, who based racism based on color of skin, and that is wrong because a race is people based on the name or the heritage, not based on the color of skin, which is an adjective I'm going to expose later on anyway. So the classifications are wrong across the board. So here we go about Carlos Linnaeus. This is the guy you would have. Anybody wants to find out about racism, the classification of racism, these are the people you should be looking at. Do your own due diligence. I've given you the information. I've given you the names. You need to write them down. Go do your own due diligence. But this is what I found out. I was doing this recently. The race classification modern day by Carlos Linnaeus. All modern classification systems have their roots in Linnaean classification system. Remember, I told you it's already influenced by the Jesuits. When I expose this later on, you'll see why I've gone the route I've gone. You won't get it now, but you will get it later on. Linnaeus classification system. It was developed by Swedish botanist Carlos Linnaeus in the 1700s. This is only recently. Before then, it didn't exist. Only recent classifications. This is where the problem with races comes. It's all nonsense. He tried to classify all living things that were known at his time. He grouped together organisms that shared obvious physical traits, such as number of legs, the shape of leaves. For this contribution, Linnaeus is known as, and this is key here, the father of taxonomy. Okay, taxonomy. Write that term down and then do your own due diligence. The main systems of classification consist of hierarchical groupings. So that in itself automatically is already put you in a position because it's hierarchical. So therefore you can. So all this stuff are all races are equal bollocks because the qualifications that they're using is already hierarchical. So you're already in a loss. So you cannot have equality in a system that's based on hierarchy. That means somebody's got to be more special than somebody else. So that's where the problem is. It's all an illusion. Let me keep going. I'm not even done. I'm not even near finished yet. Hierarchical group is called taxa, singular taxon. Taxas range from the kingdom to the species. The kingdom is the highest and most inclusive grouping and consists of organisms that share just a few basic similarities. Examples are the plant and animal kingdoms. The species, which is what humanity should be looking at, which is a species, not as a group of colors and crayons, which is nonsense. The species is the smallest and most exclusive grouping. It consists of organisms that are similar enough to produce fertile offspring together. Closely related species are grouped together in the genus. Okay? So I'm going to keep going at this point, unless Jupiter, you want to cut in at any point.
No, keep
Jupiter? All right, you happy with me to keep going? She's enjoying herself so far. Okay, so-called races. So these are law dictionaries. I'm using Black's Law, 4th edition. I'm using Oxford Dictionary only, or Bouvier's. Am I clear? There are only 3 dictionaries I'm using in this talk. So-called races. White race. Within, and again, this is
okay, you're breaking up.
This is white race. Within the meaning of the Mississippi Constitution, by the way, this is from Black's Law, Constitution of 1890, 207, providing that there are, remember what I told you? Yes, Jupiter, shall I try again? Shall I try again, Jupiter?
Yeah, please.
All right, let's try again. White race. Within the Mississippi Constitution of 1890, 207, remember I'm giving you a reference point, providing that there shall be separate schools for white and coloured children. Now, interesting how they've got coloured children, but they don't say black there. Isn't that interesting? They said coloured. To keep in mind, I'm getting you to look at this specifically, coloured. Right? The Caucasian race term, coloured white persons. So again, I'm giving you again, white persons, listen, and comes into this, the Naturalization Act of March 26, 1790. So white persons were only existed in terms of the United States, were classed as white persons. The Naturalization Act 1790. Before then, they weren't classed as white persons. They'd have had maybe white race rather than white persons. But anyway, the Naturalization Act is what made it. They had to set that jurisdiction up. Members of the white or Caucasian race is distinct from the black, red, yellow, and brown or colored races. Races being used in contradiction to the white race and embrace all other races. Now, there's something I found here. Now, here you'll see it says black code. When I looked up the term black in the Black's Law definition, you couldn't find it. It wasn't there. That's interesting. What I did find was this. There is a reason why I put this on there, because it's something I've got later on that relates to this, and I knew what they was playing at. So it says here, black code. A name given collectively to a body of laws, statutes, and rules in force in various southern states prior to 1865. This is talking about the United States. Keep in mind about George Floyd and all this nonsense, right? Which regulated the institution of slavery, and particularly forbidding their reception at public inns and on public conveyances, civil rights cases, and it's got the civil rights cases there. So there was no such thing as black in the Black's Law Dictionary. I couldn't find it. It was in the Bouvier's dictionary. So I went to the Oxford Dictionary and it was there, but I'm going to get in on that later on. But white race was there and so was white persons. So that's why I put it on here.
Right, so this would be after Bacon's rebellion.
Yeah. There's certain things that have been going on, and I'm going to expose more of it as I go through. Go ahead, you. Go ahead. You want to contribute?
Yeah. No, I was going to say. So this would be after Bacon's rebellion, when the slaves and the indentured servants all revolted together because.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, War of 1812. Yeah, I'm going to get in on it. There's an aspect of this that's even more important than that that's happened in the 1700s. That's why I talked about Carlos and the nails. I'm going to expose some stuff with that later on. So yes, you're on the right track. Anything else?
No, go ahead.
All right, Hector, you all right so far?
Yeah, I'm all right. All right, man.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, now I'm going to get into corporations. There's a reason why I'm doing it in this order. So, the history of corporations, this is going to be more relevant. The history of corporation. When most refer to a corporation today, it's usually the modern term. This is key here. Write this term down because you're going to need to use it. Joint stock corporation. That's your birth certificate and everybody been trading on the stock market. But I'm going to leave that to later on because it's going to get exposed. Right? Joint stock corporation that they are referring to. However, there are other types of corporations as well. These types are largely used by the global super rich and powerful, dominated by the heads of the Roman Catholic Church. Right, now we're going to keep going. The fascist Roman corporation, 100 AD. The Publicani, remember about the public? So the Publicani, the ancient Romans were the first to create what we now call corporations. The modern word corporation is derived, and this is why I'm showing you because I use proper text here, is derived from the Latin word corpus for body, which is in the earliest times in fascist Rome represented a body of people authorized to act as an individual. Individe you all. Again, individe you all. When you break it down, when you do etymology, individe you all.
Okay.
Somebody is coming in. Oh, John Lawrence is here. I've got to admit him. John Lawrence is here. John Lawrence is here. Sorry, I've got to admit John Lawrence. I'm going to keep going. John Lawrence.
Hi, John. Woo!
Hi guys.
John, it's getting interesting. I'm gonna have you speaking with us at some point. I'm going through my history of corporations. I'm explaining the race game and all this nonsense going on. So I've exposed about Carlos Linnaeus. I've started off with Carlos Linnaeus. I'm just gonna quickly just fill John in before we run and jump into this next bit. So what I've been doing, John, I don't know if you can see the screen. What I was talking about, just so you can see it in front of you, I'm talking about the etymology of words and what words mean. I've been talking about the roots, the meaning of words, where racism came from, and we talk about how the judges have influenced everybody. We're talking about where it's come from, the race classifications, and who's made them up, and who's done them, and got to what white races, what black races are, stuff like that. We've just got to this with corporation. So I've only done so far, John. I'm on the 9th slide. Okay, so John, especially because I've invited you on. If there's anything you want to touch on or add on, please jump in, YouTube especially. But when I get towards the end, you're going to be wanting to jump in because when I start breaking some stuff down, you'll be thinking, okay, now I know why he doesn't call himself this or he doesn't call himself that. So you'll find it more fascinating as it gets on later on. So whenever you're ready, if you want to jump in, John, just let us know.
Right, I will, yeah.
Thanks for coming on as well.
Hiya, mate. Long time no see.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
You will. How's your mum?
She's all right, yeah.
Oh, good. And I love you loads, Big John.
Thank you, Angie, thank you.
Love you loads.
Yeah, you've touched on, you've mentioned this before, Delroy, but you didn't go into so much detail about it. I remember you saying a couple of times, but yeah, it is very interesting. So carry on anyway, carry on.
Yeah, John, you're going to find it even more interesting when I get towards the end. I've got some surprises. Trust me, you're going to love it. But that's why I wanted you on, because I wanted to have your opinion. I did message you earlier. So glad you've come on, because I definitely want your opinion, Jupiter, as well. We've got quite a lot of us on here, but and we're going to probably get everybody's opinion at some point, and we're going to speak more. Particularly later on, people are going to ask more questions, but I'll keep going for now. So, I'll just get to corporations. All right, cheers, John. So the ancient Romans were I've done that bit. I need to get to India. Individual is an individual. They were codified into Roman law, known as corpus juris civilis. Remember, civil and criminal. Over time, the publicani evolved into permanent companies with numerous investors. Large publicani employed thousands of workers spread across Rome's provinces. I'm going to keep going. History of corporation. Equities, who were defined by a property ownership threshold, constituted with the lower of the aristocratic classes in Rome. They were originally a division of the legionary cavalry, were below senators and patricians. I've said that as Roman senators' ability to engage. Listen, as Roman senators' ability to engage in commerce was strictly limited by law. The bulk of landed estates. This is key one. Keep highlighting this: estates, mining operations, manufacturing, construction, shipping, maritime, and tax farming companies called publicani were controlled by them, and thereby they became very rich. Hence what's going on now with the Bestica. Under Augustus, senators and equites formed a small elite, that's going on now, a small elite of under 10,000 members, monopolized political, military, and economic power, and an empire for about 60 to 70 million inhabitants. Guess what's going on worldwide? But I'll keep leaving that for later on. Roman Catholic Church. Rome during the 4th century, during the 3rd and 4th centuries AD, under the Roman emperors, the political landscape shifted and the publicani were suppressed. New forms of corporations emerged. Charitable corporations were established to serve Rome's growing decadent population. These in turn set the stage for the rise of the Roman Catholic Church's corporations. After Emperor Constantine declared Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire in 323 AD, the emerging Catholic Church carried on employing the fascist Roman corporate form, customs, and practices, and employed these as a vehicle for joint ownership of real estate. This is the KP Act, real estate, and for dioceses, administrative divisions of provinces, maritime administrations. You're going to enjoy this later on. Among the first to do were the monks who held title, Mr. Mrs. non-decay, held title to their monasteries, hence where people have titles to today, held title to their monasteries through corporations. Woo! Gets better, gets better, gets better. Let's have a look. So let's go about the East India Company. Now we're moving a bit more further forward. Okay. Charter companies are not so common today. They usually formed a group of investors or shareholders in colonial times to gain a monopoly over trade. Under royal charter granted by the sovereign, Queen Elizabeth, wink wink, and less commonly by a republican government. Listen, this is key here. These were usually joint stock. Remember what I said earlier on? Joint stock companies with transferable shares that could be bought and sold. Stock market, birth certificates, wink, wink. Keeping a hint. Without, and I'm going to get on that later. With or without limited liability, England gained much wealth of the world and financial power for the creation of these joint stock royal charter companies in the 1400s through to the 1800s. Woo! You're going to enjoy this level because it gets more interesting. Keep in mind what we talked about Castle and Nails. It gets better. So this is why the problem is. So I'm just going to just quickly stop for one brief moment. So what I'm going to go into now is I'm going to explain to people why white people are not free. And then when I've done that, I'm going to explain why they're not free, and I'm also going to show why so-called black people are not free, even though they're not black and they're not white, because of these corporations I've explained earlier on. I'm going to expose how they're all interlinked. So this country lost larger tax to its land. So basically, the people are no longer under common law, and because they're not under common law, they're corporations. And this is what happened in 1213. This is linked to what I was just explaining earlier. So I'm going to keep having fun. Secret Treaty of Verona of 1213. Before 1066, the people of England held legal title to their land. Now, remember what I said about the monasteries earlier on in that talk? I talked about the monks in the monastery holding title and how important it is. Right? Keep in mind about Mr. Mrs. Londigan, you've all got 1,000, you don't know what they are. Keep in mind the people at top hold their titles and they hold them for a reason. So the people of England held loyal title to their land, which means they own their titles. They weren't owned by somebody else, but you're going to find out why somebody else owns the titles. And that's why I told Alan, and he said not to use a Mr. or non-de-gear. That's why I was telling him earlier because of this. Right. Not even the king could take the land for not paying a tithe. So remember, the king couldn't take the land. Keep in mind who owned the land, the people, all right? Not even the king could take the land for not paying a tithe. William the Conqueror came in 1066 and stole the king's title, this is key here, and took the land of the people. From 1066 to 1099, England was in dire straits and was bankrupt. Wink, wink. They used gold and silver back then. You don't use that today for fiat currency. We're getting on this. We're set to KB out later on. It gets better. The king invoked the law of Mortmain, the dead man's hand. Right? So the people, listen to this. Not the kings, women, but sovereign. So the people couldn't pass their land onto the church. Keep in mind who was sovereign back then. The people could have passed their land on the church, not the king's land, the people's land. Or anyone else without the king's permission, the Roman taxable bond of Vaticantia. I can keep killing this all day long. Right, let me keep going. Modern day probate. Without Mortmain, the king would lose the land he controlled. The Vatican, the Jesuit cabal cult, didn't like that because the king owed lots of pounds to the Vatican. King John refused to accept the Vatican's representative, Stephen Langton, who the Pope Innocent III installed to rule England. England. So, and I just say here, and it just says, powerful interdict means probation on an interdict. Now, I'm just going to jump into this next part. So we talked about the people being sovereign under child's gnosis in common law. That the Lord will pass to the land which you don't hold today, your freehold and leasehold, born of vacantia. I'm going to get on that later on. Now, this is key. 1213, this is why Magna Carta's got screwed. This is why you don't have common law in the country. This is why. 1213, and the contract, called the Treaty of Verona, King John, as most kings, tried to no avail to establish, as William the Conqueror did, a dictatorship, which is going on now with the cabal cult. This seems to be the model to follow, and William set a precedence that all kings and queens would try to follow, or at least they would try to push the boundaries further set out in the doctrine written by the Church of Rome. Keep in mind, I talked about the history of corporations and where this is all coming from. The Pope's main goal was to try and control all land of the world under the doctrine that he is the vicar of Christ, using the myth of Jesus Christ to achieve this. The myth of Jesus Christ, because he's the vicar of Christ. Vicarious means in place of, which means it's a former class substitute. People don't know this stuff because they don't study. Vicar of Christ, using the myth of Jesus, which Jesus didn't exist, but Yeshua did, but we're not talking about that tonight. I've got to leave that for another time to achieve this. Placing him at the top of the chain, and by using this myth to his and to whosoever's benefit, trust law, trustee, administrator, keep in mind benefit, operating a trust, he would proclaim that he was the owner of all lands on behalf of Jesus until such time that Jesus would return and he would supposedly hand it back to him. Nonsense. Contained within every living, breathing creature, including us, basically in servitude to his wishes and all his commands. This was done through the legal system called canon law, the law of contracting that works through frictions, birth certificates, wink, wink. It is itself only fiction. So the stage, set the stage. We have the Pope at the top of the chain, supposedly owning all land and everything upon it, and the canon law as the script for the play. And that the principle of the script is to be that the principles of religion, real lies going on. contribute most powerful to keep the nations in a state of passive obedience, including their kings and queens. In being the vicar of Christ, the number one law is to be used as the first was the fear of God, governance, ordinance, departments. Now I'm going to get into what they've been up to. Let me keep going. Papal bulls and the Roman cult. People who need to do this who are in the chat. Unum sanctum. Okay, this is the papal bull you need to do the research on. Slavery of all people, man, woman, and children. Okay, so this is how it is. The high curse and high magic of Lord Baal, it is remains the firm doctrine of the Roman cult and the agents once a papal bull, papal pontificum, papal bull is issued, it exists as absolute original law for the eternity and cannot be rescinded unless it contradicts the previous papal bull. Thus, each and every papal bull is a deliberate and conscious curse of an ancient scripture, sacred text, and wisdom of the divine creator. Unum Sanctum 1302, that's the one you want to be getting on, and I'm just going to read for it now. So, urged by the faith, we are obliged to believe that and maintain that the church is one and holy and Catholic, and also apostolic. We believe in her, which is a lie because it's not her, it's an it. Firmly, we confess, although it's built on female geometry, but I'm going to leave, I need to keep going because I can't start going off on the other stuff. We confess in the simplicity that outside of her, there is neither salvation nor remission of sins, self-ignorant nonsense. And spouse of the Cantes proclaims one is my dove, my perfect one. She is the only one, the chosen of her who bore her, and she represents one soul, mystical body. Remember I talked about corporations and bodies earlier, whose head is Christ, and the head of Christ is God. And that's Corinthians 1:1-3. In her, then, is one Lord. Remember, New World Order, one world government, one world this, one world that, coming from you know who. One faith, one baptism. Furthermore, we declare, we proclaim, we define that is absolutely necessary for salvation that every human creature, birth certificate, be subject to the Roman pontiff. That's Unum Sanctum. That's the first world trust that was set up. That's enslaving everybody to this day. Unum Sanctum. There's a trust I've read from it. Go do your own due diligence, write from it. Let me keep going unless you want to add on. You want to come in Jupiter, by all means, fine. You want to come in Jupiter?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No, carry on. It's okay.
All right, that's.
I'm just sort of like amazed.
All right, I suffer. All right, it gets better. It gets better. It gets even better. It just gets better. Let me keep going. So, let me keep going. It gets better and better and better and better and better. Okay, so we're going to expose who's really controlling the world right now. And these are controlling black, white, green, orange, purple, whatever you want to call yourselves next week, which is an illusion anyway, which will get exposed later on. Jesuit Cabal Roman cult. The Jesuit order is almost a 500-year plus covert operations of geopolitical, male only. I was going to say that again, male only organization structured as a secret military. Keep in mind, everybody's running the postal unit. Postal codes are all running through UPU. That's all military. Okay, that's why everybody has postal codes, but I'm going to leave that for another time. Demand secret oaths and complete, and I might read the fourth part at some point if it's necessary, oaths and complete obedience to each direct superior, which is ultimately the superior general, often named as the Black Pope. At the moment, that's obstacle, by the way. I've got his details. Want to know who he is? I'll explain who he is later. Since he dresses in black and stands in the shadow of the white Pope, again, black, white. You see who's playing the game? Black, white. Those who've been playing, people have been playing the game and they can't see it. The Society of Jesus is, as they are officially known, was originally used by the Vatican to counter various reformations. And I'm going to explain that's important because regards to later on with Martin Luther, which I'm going to talk about papal bulls later. Which I've got in about a couple of minutes actually. Reformation movements in Europe, to which the Vatican lost most of its religious and political power. And this is what people standing up. People realize what the cult was doing, and people says we don't want that no more. But I'm going to expose that later on. Okay, absolute temporal power. Keep in mind the last temporal scripture in London, not owned, and it's a democracy, which is not owned by a constitutional monarch. The Queen works for the Pope. Again, on that later on. Absolute temporal ruling power has always been with the Vatican institution and primary objective. Keep in mind, temporary. Remember, the Pope's vicarious is a vicar. Remember, Lord temporal and spiritual. Wink, wink. Parliament's not yours; it ain't owned by you. But let me keep going. The Jesuit order is since 1814 is in complete control of the obscenely wealthy Vatican institution and its Catholic clerical hierarchy. Remember hierarchy. Remember I talked about Carlos Leos Erlons and that was influenced by the Jesuits. Remember I talked about the hierarchy. Okay, it's all controlled. Race-based is controlled. Races are controlled. I'm going to expose this quite soon. And presently also controls various other organizations together with military, and this is key here, the Military Order of Malta. This is key here. Sovereign Order of Knights of Malta. Look that up. If you want to know about Sovereign Order of Knights of Malta, look it up. You need to know information on it. I can do some information on it. I've got some stuff, but look up. That's the Queen, the so-called Queen. She's not my Queen. She works for the Pope. She's the Dame Hospitality of the Knights of Malta. The Pope owns her, and that's why she's the Dame Hospitality of the Knights of Malta. Tony Blair's in Malta. Most of these leaders, they take a blood off when they become Knights of Malta, and they all work for the Pope. But I'm going to leave that for now. I can keep going, but I need to keep going on what I need to be on. Okay, Knights of Malta, such as United Nations, NATO, the European Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and all central banks. I'm going to expose some of that later on as well as part of this talk. Big corporations, remember what I said about corporations earlier, secret services, numerous societies, and cults such as Freemasonry, the Brotherhood, and Opus Dei. I'm allowed to keep going. Are you okay so far, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carry on.
Keep going. Okay, so the age of discovery. Yeah, go ahead, Hector. Are you okay, Hector? I'm allowed to keep going. It gets better. All right, I'll continue. John said carry on. Okay. Oh, it gets better. Hector, I'm not. Wait, it gets better, Hector. I can't wait. I'm busting to get to the end. I'm going to expose better stuff. Oh, I'm sat there. I'm trying to go as fast as I can because I'm so excited because I've got so much more to expose. There's so much more of this. I'm only on side 17 of 28. It gets better, Hector. You enjoying this, Hector? When I start exposing some of the other stuff I've got coming.
Loving it, mate. I'm learning.
Okay. Age of discovery. This is what the issue is. And I remember I talked about history and corporation, the Catholic Church, and what's really going on. The Catholic Church joined the age of discovery, and this is related to so-called people or so-called black or not. This is the age of discovery affected them. So I've explained how so-called white people have been affected in this country, been taken over by the Roman cult. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it's affected people who are melanated, who are call themselves black and they're not. Okay? Rome did this across the board to everybody, but the masses can't see. They get involved in a race war, but I'm going to keep explaining. Let me keep going because it gets better. The Catholic Church, during the age of discovery, inaugurated a major effort to spread Christianity. Now, remember, it's a body politic, it's a political corporation. Remember, for mass enslavement, so keep in mind, Christianity in the New World. What is the New World? Keep saying that, I mentioned it on the New World. We're going to find out what the New World is in a minute. The New World. And to convert the indigenous peoples of the Americas and other indigenous peoples by any means necessary, hence black. But I'm not done yet, it gets better. I'm going to explain how all this goes in. The evangelical effort was a major part of and the justification for the military. Keep in mind you're on the war codes right now with your misters and titles and all the rest of it, right? Because it's still going on with the KPI. For military conquest of European powers such as Portugal, Spain, and France. Christian missionaries to the indigenous peoples ran hand in hand with the colonial efforts of the Catholic nations. In the Americas, which is the New World, and other colonies in Asia and Africa, keep in mind, most missionaries were run by religious orders such as the Franciscans, Dominicans, Augustinians, and the Jesuits. In Mexico, the early systematic evangelization by Mexicans came to be known as the spiritual conquest of Mexico. Now, this is a key one here. So, if you want to do your own due diligence, this is another paper. It's called Dum Diversis. Write that down, do your own due diligence. I've got it here anywhere. I've found the source for it, but write it down, do your own due diligence. So, Dum Diversis. To confirm the Portuguese trade rights, King Alfonso V applied to the Pope. Remember, the king applied to the Pope. These people are not sovereign, you know. Applied to the Pope, Nicholas, for support, seeking the moral authority of the church for his monopoly. The vote of 1452 was addressed to Alfonso V and conceded Portugal's right to attack, conquer, and subjugate the Saracens, who were Moors and pagans who were in the Americas. Okay, that's so-called blacks who were not black. The Saracens are not blacks, obviously, and pagans. We grant you by these present documents with our apostolic authority. Keep in mind what I said about the age of discovery. Full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers. That's across the board. Yeah, and the enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdoms, duchies, counties, principles, and other property, and we reduce their persons into perpetual servitude.
What the fuck?
Okay, so that's just, and I've not read all that. Let me keep going, it gets better. Unless you want to add something to it, I can keep going. Do you want to say anything?
No, I'm just seeing the cycles coming back to life. It's just weird. Yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, it gets better. I'll keep going. It gets better. I'm not done yet. It gets better. Okay, slavery on all people. Man, woman, and children. So the blueprint for conquest. So this is another thing you need to look up. This is called Romanus Pontifex. Latin, again, I'm giving you translations I've got from dictionary. Latin for the Roman Pontiff is a papal bull written in 1544 by Pope Nicholas V to King Alfonso V of Portugal. Listen, as a follow-up to Dum Diversis, it confirmed to the crown of Portugal dominion. Remember what I keep talking about when we talk about custody, right? Dominion over all lands south of the Cape Verde in Africa. Okay, so they're claiming dominion over Africa. All right, so remember with the conquest, along with encouraging the seizure of the lands of the Saracen Turks and non-Christian. Anybody who wasn't Christian, non-Christian. This is key here. Keep in mind, I'm not criticizing Christian because Christians are body politic. He's used as a political, not religious, but the Pope is disguising it. That's what I was exposing with the history of corporations earlier on. It repeated the earlier bull's permission for the enslavement of such peoples. The bull's primary purpose was to forbid other Christian nations from infringing the King of Portugal's right of trade and colonization of these regions, particularly amid the Portuguese and Castilian competition for ascendancy over new lands discovered. And this is what I'm going to get to now. So this is Pope Alexander here. So this is Bulla Antiquater. This is another Pope that is important. This is key here. This is when the Moors lost their power. Pope asserts the right to colonize and convert and enslave. Pope Alexander issued the papal decree Antiquater. This is key here, in which authorizes Spain and Portugal, so now there's two countries, to colonize the Americas, the New World. Listen, and its native peoples are subjects. Keep in mind about George Floyd and all this bullshit that's going on over there at the moment. I'll expose that later on. The decree asserts the rights of Spain and Portugal to colonize, convert, and enslave, and also justifies the enslavement of Africans. This is across the board. So they don't matter about color. Okay, so remember I talked about how people enslaved in this country. Now I'm talking about its export of the world. Yeah? So I'll keep going. This is what's going on. I'm enjoying myself right now. So, the monster octopus has so many tentacles, but all of the sucking arms, nothing is more secretive than the central bank of all central banks. The BIS, Bank of International Settlement, is nestled in the country with the Red Cross, the flag representative. The Bank of International Settlements, keep in mind everybody's doing commerce with the birth, I'll get on that in a bit. Settlements is headquarters as shown above and looks a lot like the Vatican Bank in Rome. That is because it is the Vatican Bank. I'm going to explain why it is later on. I'm going to expose it all. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were both created at the International Convention of Bretton Woods in New Hampshire in the United States in July 1944. The goal of the conference was to establish a framework for economic cooperation and development that would lead to more subtle and prosperous global economy. This is for part of what they're going with the New World today. While the goal remains central to both institutions to work. Get off me, man. Stop getting in my way, stupid thing. Move. I'm busy right now. Their work is constantly evolving to respond to new economic developments and challenges. I'm going to leave about this one about codification. That is another paper bull. I'm going to talk about that later. Okay, I'm going to get into the next bit. I'm going to talk about that. In fact, now this is it. This is it now. So this is the third crown. This is another papal bull. This is also important because if you come for a woman, this is about everybody. It don't matter about color. It's about soul. So I'm going to explain this now. The third crown and ecclesiastical see slavery of man, woman, and children across the board. So let's explain what codification means. Again, Law Dictionary. From Latin converse, meaning to call, to come together. The translation in Greek is ecclesia, is a group of people formally assembled for a special purpose, mainly ecclesiastical. And you can see there, that's the ecclesiastical authority of the Pope, and that's where they do everybody, that's enslaving everybody, and these secret conferences. Now I'm going to explain more about it now as I go across. The third crown, and this is, and I've given you the date so you can do your own due diligence, but I've got the text here anyway. The third crown was created in 1537 by Pope Paul III through the bull codification, also meant to open the Council of Trent. It is the third and final testamentary deed and the will of testamentary trust set up. Keep in mind, understanding was the first one. Set up for claiming all lost souls. All lost souls. It don't matter about color. All lost souls lost to the sea. The Venetians assisted in the creation of the first Settecavy Act in 1540. I'm going to expose this later on to use this papal bull as the basis of the ecclesiastical authority of Henry VIII. This crown was secretly granted to England in the collection of reaping the souls. Keep in mind about birth certificates. The crown was lost in 1816 due to the deliberate bankruptcy of England and granted to the Temple Bar. British accreditation registry, it's owned by the Jesuits in Square Mile of London. I exposed that later, which became known as the Crown Bar or simply the Crown, which is you still got to this day. Remember about 1213? I talked about was losing larger title and the crown is owned by the Pope. It is. The bar associations have since been responsible for administering what does Trump call himself? Administration. Boris Johnson calls himself administrations. Keep in mind what they are. Administering the reaping of the souls of the lost and damned, including the registration and the collection of baptismal certificates representing the souls collected by the Vatican and stored in their vaults. Hence why I talked about the bank that I showed you earlier on, the Vatican Jesuit Bank. The Lord received souls, the Jesuits are claiming everybody. Now here we go. Remember what Charles showed us with the birth certificate earlier on as well when he was on. This third crown, represented by the third Settecavy Trust, created when a child is baptized. It is the parents' grant of the baptismal certificate title. Remember I talked about titles earlier on and what they are, and you Mr. and Mrs. and all that nonsense. Title to the soul, to the church registrar. This is why they get to register all the time. This without legal titles over one's own soul, we will be denied legal standing, birth certificates, and will be treated as things, property, cargo without souls, upon which the British Accreditation Registry is now legally able to enforce maritime law. Danny Bryan, there you go. That's for him. He knows what I mean, Danny Bryan does, because he asked me earlier on, and that's what I meant. Right, here we keep going. Okay, Council of Trent. This is key here. Let's have more fun. May 1536, Pope Paul established the papal bull of codification. Keep in mind, people fighting against this, but you're going to see that in a minute. For the purpose of this council to be held in Mantua, he also authorized a select group of cardinals to draw up a report on the abuses within the church, guided by Cardinal Gaspio Continarini. This group denounced the ordination of, poorly prepared priests, the selection of incompetent bishops, the accumulation of benefices. Remember I talked about trust law, because there's trust, there's a beneficiary, there's an administrator, and a trustee. Guess who they made trustees? And the decadence of the religious orders preaching and the care of souls. The report, however, fell into Protestant hands. Protestants. Why were people protesting and standing in this country? 1213. They knew what happened to them. Protestant. Protest and stance. Again, etymology breakdown there. Hands, and was used by Luther in a violent attack on the Roman Church and the papacy. Nevertheless, the Pope pursued his plans to hold the council, scheduled to open on May the 23rd, 1537, at Mantua. With the infinite patience, Paul sought to overcome the opposition of emperor, kings, prelates, and princes, arguing and postponing the council's opening again and again over the course of 9 years, but finally succeeding in having inaugurated by his legate uh, Cardinal Giovanni del Monte. And so this is how they claim the souls. This is how they did to get it all up. Now, this is another purple bull I want you to look at, and it's up here. You can see in front of you in the picture. Exercise Dominion, arise, Latin, arise the Lord, is a paper book proclamated on June 15, 1520. It's the reason why I'm reading this, by Pope Leo the 10th. It was written in response to the teachings of Martin Luther, who's obviously a Protestant, in which opposed the views of the church. Now, what did he oppose? All the stuff I've been explaining earlier on. Okay, that's what he opposed because he knew the truth. It censored 41 propositions extracted from Luther's, again, 95 pieces. People should read that. And subsequent writings, and threatened him with excommunication. Anybody who's been excommunicated by the Catholic Church, they're heroes. You want to read who they are, because it's anybody who opposes the church about all this nonsense that I've been explained, or all this stuff, not nonsense, because it does make sense, all this information I've been explaining earlier on. So let me keep going. This gets better. He recanted within, unless he recanted within a 60-day period, commencing upon the publication of the bull in Saxony in its neighbouring regions. Luther refused to recant and responded instead by composing polemical tracts lashing out at the papacy and the public burning of a copy of the bull on December 7, 1520. As a result, Luther was excommunicated. So anybody who stood against the Pope, they paid with their lives for it. And this is my point, because they were enforcing this slavery and all this nonsense. Now I'm going to keep going, because it just gets better and better. So, now, what I'm going to talk about here now is the slavery of so-called black, so-called whites. I'm going to expose it a little bit more now. So, here we go. Slavery on all people, man, woman, and children, is a SSKV trust, also known by several other pseudonyms as such a term of life, or purified actress trust, or fied commissionary trust, or foreign citus trust. A secret trust is a pseudo form of trust formed in the 16th century under Henry VIII. I remember I talked about this earlier on with Unum Sanctum of England, and one or presumptions, including but not limited to one or more persons being presumed wards, hospital wards, infants, idiots, lost or abandoned at sea. Remember I talked about souls and the claiming of souls just recently. Okay? Therefore presumed dead after 7 years. Additionally, presumptions by the trust may be legally formed were added in later statutes, including bankruptcy, incapacities, mortgages, and private companies. Here we go. And if people want to keep going with this, it's on this next part. The second act outlined with the Chester KB Trust is deliberately hidden under the reign of Henry VII in 1488. Listen, permitted laws to render any attempt by people classified as wards, and this is still going on to this day, to demonstrate their freedom useless, and that such law may use writs and other devices to force such people back to being compliant, keep in mind about 12 to compliant, back to poor slaves. The only remedy under this act was if a ward demonstrated to the waste of a lord as to be property and energy seized from the poor ignorant white slaves. And here I've got some books that people can read, because whites were enslaved as well, because they've been doing it through the birth certificate. Book by Michael Jordan, it's called White Chicago, explains white slaves in the Americas because we're transporting them out there. And another book is there were white and slaves, and it's a book by called Michael Hoffman. And again, read those stuff because it's got the information in people being enslaved across the board. It's not about color, it's about what they've done. Okay, now I'm going to read this. Can a man serve God faithfully and possess slaves? Brother Joseph Mobley, SJ, asked in his diary in 1880. Yes, he answered. It is then lawful to keep men in servitude. The Jesuits of Maryland province had always relied keep in mind what I said about the corporation and them taking over for the papal bulls earlier on, plantation to support their ministries. Their estates were extensive, totaling 12,000 acres on 4 large properties in southern Prince George's, Charles, and St. Mary's counties. and two smaller states on Maryland East Shore. In 1634, keep in mind what I said, when the Jesuits arrived in Maryland, Lord Baltimore awarded them quasi-estates in which they were permitted to live off and rent to tenant farmers. However, Incork explains the system was totally antiquated, and Rome's antics or romantics were not related to reality, and they realized they were not going to make any money. So the Jesuits turned to indentured servants, Englishmen and women. They're white Englishmen and women, white Englishmen and women who worked the land for a set term in return for passage from England. So slaves across the board. So members of where white people lived, they were across the board from England to Maryland. But as working conditions improved in England, the supply of indentured servants dropped, and the Jesuits once again found a new way to work the land. By the 1680s, they relied upon a fully developed slave system, and this is what I'm going to get in on to now. So this is the so-called now. This is affect the people in the Americas. So they've enslaved Europeans. Now I'm going to talk about how they enslaved them. It's across the board. Nobody's got out of this. Jesuit Bible Codes is the Court Law 1724. The regular relations between the slaves and the colonists of Louisiana Code Law, or the slave code, based largely on that complied in 1685. Keep in mind I talked about the Jesuits in the 1600s just now. From the French Caribbean colonies were introduced in 1724 and remained in force until the United States took possession of Louisiana in 1803. The code 54 articles regulate the status of slaves, free blacks. I'm going to get in and explain what black means later on. Free blacks, as well as relations between masters and slaves. The entire body of laws based law, and I've got some of it here, so I'm going to read from it. So the Court I couldn't fit them all in. If people want a full text of this, I've got a full text for you can read them all. These are words I wanted to think, because I want to expose how everybody's enslaved, not just black, it's white. Everybody was. So you need to get out your stupid illusions. The decrees and expulsion of the Jews from a colony. This is the code 2. Makes it imperative of masters to impart religious instructions to their slaves. Keep in mind what I said about honor and sanctum and everything else, and earlier on and all the papal bulls and all the enslavement. Okay? Okay, let's keep going. 3. Permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic creed only. I'm going to say that again. Permits the exercise of the Roman Catholic creed only. Every other mode of worship is prohibited. Negroes, and I'm going to break out what Negro means later on. Negroes placed under the direction or supervision of any other person that a Catholic are liable for confiscation. 5. Sundays and holidays are to be strictly observed. All Negroes, I'm going to expose what that word is later, found at work on these days are to be confiscated. 6 again. We forbid our white. Listen again, this is key here. This lets you know you can't do all this race baiting crap. We forbid our white subjects. I wanted to say that, man. I could just keep going. And people need to get out of this racism. It's all nonsense. You need to say it's across the board. You need to see people. We forbid our white subjects of both sexes to marry with the blacks or so-called blacks. I'll explain what that word means later on. Under the penalty of being fined and subject to some other arbitrary punishment. We forbid all curates, priests, and missionaries, or other secular or regular clergy, and even our chaplains or our navy to sanction such marriages. We also forbid all white subjects, again, look how they look upon so-called white people, and even freeborn blacks to live in a state of concubinage with blacks. Should there be any issue from this intercourse, it is our will that the person offending and the master of the slave should pay such a fine of 300 liveries. Let me keep going. And this is key here. The ceremonies and forms prescribed in the ordinance of Leos and by the edict of 1639 for marriages shall be observed both in regard to free persons and to slaves. But the consent of the father and mother of the slave is not necessary. That of the master shall be the only one required. And again, this is key. This is key here. Children issued from marriages of slaves. This is key. Children issued from marriage of slaves shall follow the condition of their parents. Keep in mind about the Sestak Act. Parents and shall belong to the master of the wife and not the husband. Master of the wife and not the of the husband, and the husband and wife have different masters. So what they've done here, and this is not all of it, there's way more than this, right? So they did this across the board. So they did the white, black, and all this race bait nonsense. It's all bollocks. It's all crap. You're not dealing with an elephant in the room. Now I'm not too far being done here because I'm on slide 25. So it says white persons here. So white persons, acts of Congress which authorize the naturalization of aliens. Again, authorize the acts of aliens, the class whites as aliens. This is law dictionary. I'm using Black's law here. It's not what I'm making up. Confine description such aliens as free white persons. So that means they weren't from Richard from America, were they? Not saying something. This excludes the African race when pure, but it's not easily to say what the shade or color is. Mixture of blood will make it a white person. The Constitution of Pennsylvania as amendment confines the right of citizenship to free white persons. And these white persons of similar words are used in the most conditions of southern states in described electors. Now, keep in mind I said that the made of white people subjects, so it don't matter what you are. So, again, we got the word Negroes earlier on, and I couldn't find the word white persons, but I found Black Muslim, an organization of American Negroes. So then I looked for the word Negro, and here it says here, adjective. That's key there, adjective, and it's in brackets, right? So, again, so the word Negro was adopted from, keep in mind what I said about the papal bulls, was adopted from Spanish and Portuguese, and first recorded from the mid-16th century. It remained the standard term throughout the 17th and 19th centuries and was used by prominent black Americans, which is nonsense, campaigners such as E.W. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington in the early 20th century. Since the Black Power movement in the 1960s, which is nonsense, Black Power movement in the 1960s, however, when the term black was favored as a term expressed racial pride, which is nonsense, Negro, together with related words such as negress, has dropped out in favor of and now seems out of date or even offensive to British and English. Nonsense. The origin of the word, which is why I've done this, is Spanish Portuguese. It means Latin. But listen, this is key here. Origin of word in Latin means nigger, black, right? And it's got the words in black. I'm going to explain this later on because it's important when I'm saying that. So now you can see here. Now this is where I get interested in. This is from what's called the Oxford Dictionary. Now, when you're doing proper trace back, because you're not taught properly, everybody's been programmed by the cabal code. When you do proper trace back, when you read an Oxford Dictionary, it goes into the etymology of things, and you can see, right? And the reason why it does that, anything that's in the brackets goes into etymon. And what you're supposed to do, even though you're not taught to do this, if you want to find where a word originates from, it'll say ME, or it'll say old DJ, or old High German, or old English. What that means is you go to the index of the book, and what you do is you look up where that word means, and you'll see that it goes either I explained this later on. If it goes into the 11th century to the 15th century, or from the 12th century to the 12th century. So it derives. It shows where the word originates from. So if a word is Middle English, it doesn't go before the 11th century. If it's Old English, it goes in the 4th century. If it's Modern English, it comes after the 15th century. So that's what you need to do what's called an etymological trace back. People are not taught properly, don't know nothing, right? So when I read this, I couldn't find black in the movies. I couldn't find black in the Black's Law. But I found it in Oxford Dictionary. I found black and I found white. So it says white here, ADJ, resembling the surface reflecting sunlight without absorbing any of the visible rays of color or milk or snow. Nearly this color pale. It says I mixed their pale. Okay, in face. White, a human group of light-colored skin, or B, related to white people, or albino white mouse, or hair having lost its color, okay, which means it's old and dead, okay. And I'm not being racist and said that. That's what it says there. It says old. People have old age. Sorry, with old age. It says old age. It says it there. Not racist. It says old age. It says it there. With milk or cream, or white color or white pigment, right? Now you'll see this. Now here, it doesn't have anything after it, but on black, when I read black, you'll see I've done it on purpose for this because I've read it for a reason. On black, it says ADJ, which means adjective, reflecting no light, colorless from lack of light, like charcoal, like soot, completely dark, black. A human group, and it's not true because we're not black, but I'm going to show you why in a minute. A human group of dark color skin, especially African, African, in his black books are wicked, sinister, deadly. Um, this is the definition: pretending trouble things, industrial labor of products boycotted, especially by their trade union or in a strike. Okay, now here I'm going to just jump into the box. I want to get to this part where it says here. There's one, make black and black foods. Declare got good, black out, or black or undergo blackout. Now here it says, if you look here, can you see this? It says Old English. Can you see that there? It says Old English.
Yeah.
You see that there? It says Old English. Right? There's a reason for that. When you do that, that means the word black, you need to look at either Middle English or Old English. So you go to the appendix of a dictionary. I'll show you this in a minute. Go to appendix of a dictionary. Okay, when you go to the appendix of that dictionary, it will tell you where the word exists in modern, in Middle England, or Old England. And that's just here. So I'm just going to show you something quickly. So here, you can see here, Old English, I've got a bit difference. Old English, Middle English, so from the different centuries, 1100 to 1500, I'm exposing that there. So that's a different bit. Now, the reason why I'm going to do this is because I want to show something. I want to show what the word black is. So black, first of all, does anybody know what an adjective is?
The word that qualifies a noun, you know?
No, not necessarily. It describes a noun. Would you say that? Yeah, so it describes a noun. But it's an adjective. If it describes a noun, is it a noun itself or is it just describing a noun?
Describes it.
Thank you. So an adjective can never be a noun, can it?
No.
Right, it can't. You've got pronouns, nouns, you've got adjectives. They're different, yeah? Okay, you've got verbs. Verbs have a specific job. Adjectives have a specific job. Nouns have a specific job, right? So, what people are getting caught up with this race baiting nonsense. You go on.
Can I just remind you to keep an eye on the time? We've got 5 minutes left. Well, Luke's on 10:30. Happy on.
Oh,
Yeah. Then I'm nearly done, and I know I want people to stop it.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't.
No, you're fine, Jason.
I don't want to come in 5 minutes and cut you dead. I thought I'd better give you a 5 minutes heads up. And we can run for 7 or 8 minutes, but Luke is on at 10:30.
Yes, right. It's all right. If anything, we'll jump on John. But if John don't mind, I'll jump on his short more. But I want to just show something to you all, just to show. So the issue is, an adjective is not a verb. An adjective is not a noun. Okay, an adjective is a job. It has a specific job for itself. What people are doing when they get caught for this race thing, John Jupiter and John Lawrence, what they're doing is they're trying to use an adjective as a thing itself. So if I say you're John, John is not an adjective. John is a noun. That's your name. It's a noun. It cannot be an adjective. What people are doing is they're using adjective as their nouns, and this is where the race baiting gets caught up. So they're saying black means it comes from original black gods of Africa, when that's nonsense, because the black didn't even exist past the Old English. It didn't exist. So the reason why they're using adjectives, the Jesuits have set up the race system with Carl Linnaeus, which I explained earlier on. And what they're doing is they're using adjectives as nouns to describe heritage and pedigree and bloodline, when it's not. It's an adjective. An adjective describing what it's doing is, under the STKB Act, it's making you what's called civilia mortuus, which means you're legally dead under the STKB Act. And so the adjective is a describing word, but it's not the thing itself. And this is why people are getting caught with black and white, and it's all nonsense. It's all a fraud, because you can't be black or white. You can only be John, or you can only be Angela. You know what I mean? You're not black or white. And this is where the issue is. But I'm going to show you what black actually means, because I'll do what's called an etymological trace back. Okay, so now I'm going to pull up a dictionary. So Old English. So what I'm going to do now is pull up a dictionary, because I have to pull up one to expose what black actually is, because obviously it's not what people think it is. So I'm going to show you what black is in a second. So what I'm doing now is I pull up a dictionary to show you what black is. So you go to the appendix of an Oxford dictionary, and it'll say Old English, Middle English. So what I'll do is I've got a dictionary now that deals with the Old English and Middle English. Okay, so I'm going to show you what black is. And let's expose this stupid nonsense about black and white. It's all crap. So now Right, we're Anglo-Saxon dictionary. This dictionary is to do with the Middle English and Old English. So remember the term, I talked about the term Negro meaning black and all this nonsense, right? Now, when you got the term white, I couldn't go back because it's only recent invention. I couldn't go back because it didn't have a translation, but black does. So let me just show you now. Let me just find this because I found it fascinating when I did this yesterday. So I'm just going to find in here the word black. And it's fascinating. I'm going to have to make it much bigger because you won't be able to see. That's not fair. At least people can see. No point showing the truth when I can't expose it. Okay, so we're going to go. Right, so I'm just. This is what you do. You go back, you trace words back, and you find out the original meaning. So we're going to go to the word black. Okay, this is fascinating because when I read this yesterday, I was in stitches. I mean, I already knew it. It's not like I didn't know. I already knew it. I've done the trace back ages ago. Okay, so nearly there. Move it a bit further on because I don't want to. Luke's going to be on in a minute. I need to get this.
It's still in the eyes. The eyes. You need to go to the BL.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying. I'm trying not to do it too quick because if it goes too far, here we go. See what I mean? It goes fast. Yeah, this will do. Okay. So, right, I'm still in the BL. Okay. So remember what I said, the term black, right? And this shows you what the meaning of it is, not the thing. It shows you what the meaning of it is. So I'm going to find the. Okay, so we found this. Okay, so I think okay. So now keep in mind what I've told you. Okay. So this is the term. Look, so going back to the 1500s, there's the term black. Can you see it there? Look. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Can everyone have confirmation there? Can you all see that?
Yep. Yeah.
Do I need to make it any bigger? You can all see it. Okay. Black. Okay. This is the true meaning. Okay. Black. Bright. Shining. Glittering. Flashing. Pale. Paled. My skin is not pale. So I cannot be black. That's all I'm saying, people. Okay. Now let me go to the etymology of it here. And it says black. And it's got the commas in here. It says black or black. So let's look at the word black, that word there where it says bleak.
So can I just interrupt you one more time? Sorry to interrupt you again, Dale. I've just spoken to Luke on the phone, and he said he's happy to jump in with us and join in. So we're going to run over into Luke's show, and Luke's going to join in with us. And Luke said, I said to Luke, what have you got planned for your show, Luke? And he said, I was just going to go over some old words and look at the old meaning of them. And I'm like, wow, that fits in. So he said he's got something to add to what we're already talking about. So he'll be in shortly. I'm going to send him a link. Back to you, Dale.
All right. So remember I told you what the word black is, and it says the word black or bleak. It's here. You can see it here. I'm not faking you up. It's in here. So I look at the word bleak. It says here. It says okay. So let's have a look at the word. So it says. I'm going to just move it over so you can see it. So I'm not faking you out. So you can see here, Blythium, bleak, bleach. Okay. So remember it says what black is, and I showed you what black meant earlier on when I showed you in the Oxford Dictionary. So I'm only doing the trace back here. It's not racial. I'm just doing the words and facts here. So people can say you're black supremacist. Bollocks. They don't even mean black. I'm not black. I'm got melanin. So again, it's all nonsense. All this black and white stuff. So the word bleach. So you've got the word black. So you've got Blythe, you've got Blycan, which is the word here. So you've got Blycan here, look. Blythian here. It says turning pale. Okay, Blything. You've got turning pale. Okay. So it's pale. So it means pale. And you've got here. And then you've got here, you've got Blythian or bleach to whiten. And then look, it says that there, look, in a project black. Do you see? So it means to whiten. Okay, bleach to whiten, it means white. Or skin that doesn't have colour in it. So black does not mean what people says it means. It means pale. And I'm not pale. I'm melanated, I'm not pale. So when I say I'm not black, I know that I'm not black. Because it means pale. And I'm not. I'm melanated. I'm not pale. I'm melanated. So I cannot be black. And that's based on etymological trace back. Not me saying so. That's in the dictionaries. So people talk about black, white. It's all nonsense. The whole thing is a crock of fraud. So I'll just stop there because I could kill everything all day long. So if you want to join in, and I'll just say, so race baiting is all nonsense. The Jesuits have enslaved everybody. All lives matter across the board. And black doesn't mean black, it means pale. So when the people saying black lives matter, saying pale lives matter, it's all nonsense. It's funded by George Soros. I've got stuff I can show about the issue with George Soros. He's funding it. But I've said so much now that if I keep going, nobody else is going to have any word in Edgeworth. So I'm going to show up, let everybody else get in, and I'll show some more stuff in a minute. Because I know people surely want to say things. So I need to shut up for a minute and just, let other people speak. Okay, I'm shutting up for a minute. All right, people, you please, John, please, I'd love to hear from you, and I'll shut my mouth.
Go on, John, you go first.
It's just interesting, but going back to like when I first met Del and some of the first things he said on here is that us working class people are so ignorant of the other classes, what they do, and how, like if you go to Oxford, you get taught a different kind of language or different meaning to language, and he's explained that a few times, and it's just mad. But we've been sheep for so long and ruled by everyone else that we just don't realise, how complicated it is, and that to us to understand. Because you've gone on about this before, Del. Yes, Hector, I see you in the photo there. You're all right, brother.
I said that earlier.
It's different, and like I said, you've said it many a time, Del. How the middle and the upper classes speak a different language. Our words mean different to them. They say it a certain way. Charles was one of the first people to explain this sort of thing to me when we did the Melanie Shaw things, and it's just complicated, and how we've all been like sheep followers all these years and not realise what's going on. It's just astounding and amazing. Honestly, it is. It is. That's all I can say at the moment. Over to you, Jupiter.
No, I knew this anyway. I'd read it somewhere years ago, but I didn't know all the other stuff that's gone with it, and I found it fascinating. I've got all my notes. I shall be going onto the speakers corner and taking them on, like I do. Yeah, I think it's brilliant that it's been broken down like this. It's quite heart-wrenching to think how much the working class have been betrayed, and how they play everybody against each other. And we really need to get this message out there, because if we can push this message, we can sort of like stop the division. Because right now we need to be stopping the division. It is getting really, really bad. So that's what I think. I mean, I know there's people further along who say, no, let's do the division. Let everybody go, and let's go this way, and let's go this way. But I'm not for that. So, and what do you think? What did you think?
Well, flabbergasted, to be honest. You understand what I'm saying?
Bastards, they deceived you more than once.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Now there was a novel I read some time ago, and I don't know, I'm almost supposed to. I would have read some of the life and found angels and demons. I mean,
yeah,
it had a lot to do with the Vatican. And while Dell was going through his notes and all his notes earlier on, he reminded me of that particular novel. Yeah, so it's just unbelievable how we've been sold. What's the word now? We've been sold a dummy.
Yeah.
Football has to say, we've been sold a dummy.
So one question. I got into a debate the other day. I don't know if you actually know, but in Britain we had laws here that said that you couldn't actually have slaves. I know that there were slaves here, but in law it wasn't allowed. And I got into a debate because the woman said to me, well, there were slaves because they were coerced into signing up and they were indentured servants. And I said, in that case, in America, the white slaves that were also indentured servants, who basically lived exactly the same, under the same living conditions, except that some of them lived long enough to sort of like outlive slavery, whereas black people didn't. They didn't get that option. Even though most white people died in servitude. That's what they don't tell you. Then the two sets of indentured servants are the same. If we're going to say the ones that were indentured in Britain are slaves, then the indentured are slaves over in America. And they're saying, no, it's different. It's different in America, but the indentured ones here are slaves. I'm saying, no, they're the same. What do you think, Neil?
That's why I talked about treaty of Verona 1213. That's why I say everything is in the talk that I gave you, because they did it with the Certificate Act. They did it across the board. The slavery that they've got here was started here, and then for the Black Bible Codes, which I showed you, was taken over there. The Jesuits did it for the indentured servitude and the slaves. They did it for the papal bulls, and then that's because of the First World Trust. That's why I talked about unum sanctum. So the first slaves were actually European slaves. They were the first ones. The Roman cult did all that nonsense. Then they transported it out of Europe to the Americas. I showed you that, the papal bulls. Yeah. So they can't say it's different. It's the same. It's a slightly different administrative system. It's still the same slave because they still got birth certificates.
All right, guys, we've got Luke's joined us now. We're going to run over into Luke's show. So rather than doing like several one into the other, and then